All right, folks. Hello, hello, hello. It's Steve Grumbine in the house, and I am going in slow motion here, aren't I? That was weird. It took a second for me to get caught up here. I'm not sure what happened there. Hopefully everything's okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Checking the mic here. You guys hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. Somebody let me know you hear me okay. If you hear me okay, I'm presuming you hear me okay. Colin, do they hear me okay? Do you hear me okay?
I still do, so I'm pretty sure they do.
There was a weird like pause, and all of a sudden
I
my
saw
voice.
that. It was
I was like, "What the hell is that?" Right?
your audio was fine. It was just your video is
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh man, I look like a frozen zombie. All right, thank you, folks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, Jordan was busy playing with the tug exerciser, and he somehow or another broke his toes. So he asked me to come on in here and sit in for him for the night. I was planning on being his sidekick tonight, but he gave me the chairman's seat. So much love to Jordan, who is nursing a little teeny toe that he broke today. So he's gonna need some love and some TLC, man. But anyway, we got a fun show for you today. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. For those of you who know me, my name's Steve Grumbine, and we're going to talk a little bit about the U.S. kind of crying poor mouth about Ukraine and not having money to fund their little proxy war with Zelensky. We're going to talk a little bit about a failed audit by the Pentagon. Well, fancy that. I've been following these things for years. Pentagon never passes these audits. It's a joke. It's a farce. And we're going to talk about the nonsense of green capitalism within the EV, electric vehicle charging arena, and all the billions spent by the U.S. government on these electric charging stations. And then lastly, we're going to touch on how your Democrats, your beautiful, loving Democrats, are fighting against a billionaire wealth tax. Go figure, Democrats, right? They're the good guys. Anyway, let's get ourselves going here. I have been honestly dealing with some of the craziest shit, trying to get my head together. I have not done my own lives in like almost 2 months. So the rust is there. Forgive me in advance. All right, Colin, let's go ahead and get us started. So Zelensky is supposed to address U.S. senators by video as the White House pushes Congress to support Ukraine for aid. They've already asked for a $106 billion request for wars in Ukraine and Israel, and of course, the rest of the security state. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announces Zelensky will be appearing after the administration Monday sent an urgent request, an urgent warning about the need to approve military and economic assistance for Ukraine, saying Kiev's war effort to defend itself from Russia's invasion may grind to a halt without it. Now, folks, we have been talking for, there's a lot of like both sides of the aisle with this nonsense. Folks, you're either pro peace or not pro peace. You're either against war or a warmonger. There's just not a whole lot of gray in there. Just like with Palestine, just like with the Israel nonsense. Same thing with Ukraine. Okay, and the U.S. has once again funded a proxy war, and they're claiming poor mouth. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been asked why there's no inflation when the U.S. spends on Ukraine? Have you ever wondered why there's no inflation when the U.S. spends on Israel? Have you ever wondered why the only time inflation comes up is when the U.S. starts talking about helping you and I, rank and file people, regular people, survive the shithole that this capitalist society has bred into our lives? Have you ever wondered why the only time they talk about printing money or other nonsense is when it has to do with giving you or I any kind of direct help? Isn't it weird? But alas, the writing has been on the wall. This proxy war with Ukraine is always doomed to fail. It was never really intended to succeed. The U.S. had its own aims, its own goals. Russia has been in the crosshairs of the Democratic establishment since Hillary lost the election to Donald Trump back in 2016. This has been their bone to chew on, their meat that they won't let go of. They're like a pit bull that won't let go of their anti-Russia sentiment. And for those of you who had the opportunity to watch Oppenheimer, you know that the United States has always chosen Russia to be their bad guy. It doesn't matter if it's Putin. It doesn't matter whether it's fricking Stalin. There's always some Russian that's in the crosshairs of the United States foreign policy, military-industrial complex, security-industrial complex. And once again, here we are now. They realize the strategy isn't working, and they're asking for more money. But the money is running out. Why? Because Congress has to authorize and approve those funds. Now, it'll be very, very interesting to see once again if, in fact, Congress bends over and throws money at this proxy war with Ukraine. We've got so much going on in this country as student debt has kicked in back on October 7th. You've got student debt that's drowning U.S. citizens. You've got student debt that will cause people to not be able to get jobs because their credit rating will not be good enough to pass the background check. You've got student debt that is going to cause regular people in the United States problems with not only getting a job, but getting a rental, getting a house, having credit to do the basic things that life requires. They will not be able to do that because the United States, the Democrats, the Republicans, and every conservative idiot in the world thought that it would be better to turn student debt back on. And Biden, who had been given the opportunity to do something about it, chose not to do something about it. So here we are. They're begging for more money, billions of dollars for Ukraine and Israel and their security apparatus, while simultaneously ensuring that rank and file people in the United States suffer more. We talk about inflation going down, but in reality, the real cost of living has gone up for regular Americans, even with gas prices going down slightly. All of us are feeling the pinch, especially as we go into the holiday season. Okay. So when you think about Ukraine and you think about foreign policy in the United States, it's very, very challenging, very, very challenging to be able to see past the red, white, and blue, the stars and bars, the US of A, and all the other happy horse shit that they pump down our throats to make us feel like we're doing the right thing by funding these wars. But in reality, all you've done is cost yourself millions of Ukrainian lives. You cost yourself, I should say hundreds of thousands, probably, I don't know. Whatever the number is, it's more than it ever should have been. Okay? The fact is that the United States has engaged once again in puppeteering. We talked about this forever. The United States is not the good guy here. But alas, they're going to go ahead and try to cry poor mouth because that is the way that they will extricate themselves from the quagmire that is Ukraine. So as they sit there and talk about this letter to the House and Senate leaders that it was released publicly by the Office of Management and Budget Director Shalanda Young, warned the U.S. will run out of funding to send weapons and assistance to Ukraine by the end of the year, saying that would kneecap Ukraine on the battlefield. She added the U.S. already has run out of money that it is used to prop up Ukraine's economy. And if Ukraine's economy collapses, they'll not be able to keep fighting, full stop. We're out of money and nearly out of time. President Joe Biden sought nearly $106 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and other needs, but has faced difficult reception on Capitol Hill. There is growing GOP skepticism about the magnitude of assistance for Ukraine, and even Republicans supportive of the funding are insisting on a U.S.-Mexico border policy changes to halt the flow of migrants as a condition for the assistance. Folks, once again, the idea that we have got to block our southern border to keep refugees and immigrants out of the country is such a racist racket of shit, such a big pile of doogie. The reality is that we've got millions, we've got trillions of dollars. We can spend whatever we need to take care of any kind of issue that we have. But of course, those people down there, they're the wrong color of melanin to be able to receive U.S. aid. Those people will be walled off and blocked out. For what? Because you're going to go through another one of these debt ceiling deals at any given time. You're going to go through another issue of budgets and all this nonsense hand-wringing. Your taxes never paid for any of it, but you'll feel like they did because they'll tell you that they did, and because they told you that they did, you naturally believe that they did. But in reality, when they want to send money to Israel, nothing could stop them. When they want to send money to build a wall, nothing will stop them. When you ask for Medicare for all, oh my God, they're going to have inflation. They're going to be printing money. You can't do that. After a while, the brain doesn't process this shit anymore if you're paying attention. If you're not so worn down to the nub that you're finally getting it, that the reality is they spend on whatever the fuck they want to spend on. There's nothing preventing them whatsoever. But the boogeyman will come, the boogeyman of the debt. The national debt is going to be up and coming here soon. You're going to hear a lot of people wringing their hands. You're going to see a lot of very serious faces. A lot of very serious people with that very serious look, and they're going to be stroking their beard. Thank you. Really, really, really contemplating the magnitude of the national debt. Quick study. The national debt is the sum total of every untaxed dollar in the economy. To spend money into existence, it's to create a debt. When you tax it back, it wipes that debt out. It's a zero-sum type thing. The reality is, it doesn't make a fucking bit of difference. The United States created it out of thin air. So why all the hand-wringing? Because in the end, you realize it's not about the money. Ukraine's not about the money. Israel's not about the money. The border wall is not about the money. It's about power. It's about control. It's about not allowing you to get out of the stranglehold that capital and the relationship between our government and capital has on your life. So why are they doing it? Control. Absolutely 100% control. The optics. It feels so good to hate somebody else, to step on someone else, to see someone as other, to see someone as less than. They're so excited they're going to build a fucking wall. We're going to harangue the president, and you're going to say, oh my God, we don't want to build Trump's wall. That's not what we want, right? And then all of a sudden you're going to equate it with Ukraine. You're saying, oh my God, we got to fund Ukraine. And they've got you. They've got you spun around. They've got you trapped in a little triangle where they're telling you that if we don't fund the wall, you can't have funding for Ukraine. And so naturally, you'll get into the sink and you'll start fighting that fight. That fight is a fake fight. It's a bunch of bullshit. It's all meant to keep you trapped and unsuccessful in fighting back, to keep you so fatigued with bullshit that the real stuff is just a bridge too far. Just a bridge too far. Let's keep reading this thing, see where it goes. It just says Congress has to decide whether to continue to support the fight for freedom in Ukraine as part of the 50-nation coalition President Biden has built, or whether Congress will ignore the lessons we've learned from history and let Russian President Vladimir Putin prevail. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Monday, it is that simple in that it is that stark a choice, and we hope Congress on a bipartisan basis will make the right choice. but negotiations over the border security package broke down over the weekend as Republicans insisted on provisions Democrats said are draconian. Oh my, they said something very stern. They're draconian. Talks are expected to resume this week, along with a test vote expected Wednesday. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, I wonder if he's frozen up on camera lately, said Monday that his party is still at the table. Congress has already allocated $111 billion to assist Ukraine, including $67 billion in military procurement funding, $27 billion for economic and civil assistance, and $10 billion for humanitarian aid. Young wrote that all of it, other than about 3% of the military funding, had been depleted by mid-November. Meanwhile, the GOP-controlled House has passed a standalone assistance package for Israel as it fights the war with Hamas in Gaza, while the White House has maintained that all the priorities must be met. Read this stuff, and maybe this works for you. Maybe you, when you hear these things, maybe it works for you. Maybe there's nothing trapping you from seeing beyond what they're saying. But for me, every time I hear it, every time I see it, every single time I see it, I think to myself, how is it even possible that people are believing this stuff still? How is it that people listen to this and say, oh, gee, they're out of money. Oh, gee, they're really wringing their hands about these Mexicans coming up from the border, these South Americans, these Central Americans. Oh, my. You wonder, at the end of the day, when it will start feeling like this is just, the lie is just too rich, man. It's too hard to stay stuck in that lie. I can't even read it without literally rejecting it. And it's not hard to reject once you understand that they're full of shit about the money. So let's get back to it. Growing increasingly uneasy about the death toll in the Israel-Hamas war, Biden's own allies in Congress are pushing the administration to have Israel commit to reducing civilian casualties and allowing aid to Gaza before sending more military aid. For fuck's sake. Last time I was on here, we talked about 4,000 dead children. Then it was 5,000. What are we up to? 6,000 dead children. The bombing has increased. They don't even care. There's nothing that's going to change. You got the crocodile tears going on out there. Oh, and now the fake calls for rape and this and that and the other. And lo and behold, here you go. Now, after so many have been murdered in cold blood, now, after all the destruction, they've turned the freaking Gaza Strip into a parking lot. Now, we've got to be very careful about reducing, not eliminating, not just stopping, not just ceasefire. We just got to reduce the civilian casualties, and then we'll give you some more money. Oh, here we go. On Monday, Senator Bernie Sanders said it would be irresponsible for the U.S. to send billions in military aid to Israel without such conditions. What the Netanyahu government is doing is immoral. It is in violation of international law, and the United States should not be complicit in those actions, Sanders of Vermont said in his floor speech. Don't count me in to support that, Sanders said. Well, shit. This has been going on, Bernie, for over a month. This has been going on for 2 months. And now you're saying, hey, don't count me in support of that? What did you have a little ticker that said, there's just enough dead babies. Now we're good. Now we'll do it. Now we're good. Okay. Anyway, the new package proposes an additional $61 billion for Ukraine, mainly to buy weapons from the U.S. And by the way, folks, these weapons are not the cutting-edge weapons. These weapons are the wholesale weapons that the United States is no longer using that are like last generation, generations ago. They're selling the old shit to clear out the inventory. You know, it's like going to Ollie's good stuff cheap. They're going there for the fucking military aid. It's hilarious. All the while, the U.S. has already got Ukraine trapped in an IMF loan also. Don't forget about the IMF's relationship here that is keeping the Ukrainian economy alive and well. Anyway, There is also nearly $14 billion for border security, along with aid for the Asia Pacific region and other U.S. national security provisions. Anyway, bottom line here is, and I think for me anyway, it's not a real big scheme here. This is standard. They're wringing their hands. They're pretending to fight this fight. This is like pitch theater. Schumer said earlier Monday that both Republicans and Democrats in his chamber agree on funding for Ukraine as well as Israel, but that the funding has been halted for weeks by GOP demands that border security police policy be included in the final package. Schumer, a New York Democrat, said Republicans have pressed for indefinite detention of asylum seekers and granting the executive branch power to shut down the asylum system, measures the Democrats say go too far. Not that the building of the wall goes too far. Not that the whole fucking shooting match goes too far. But now that you're talking about, indefinite detention, okay, that's just a bridge too far. Anyway, he's expected to push forward Biden's supplemental funding package this week, but Republicans are threatening to block its passage with a filibuster as they insist on border security provisions. I mean, after a while, seriously, don't you feel like maybe you've read this book before? It's like watching a Mission Impossible movie, and every time you watch it, you feel like you've seen this movie before. It's like watching, Ultraman, forgive me, but it's like watching the old Ultraman black and white Japanese show. And freaking, you got the stuffed animal people, the googly eyes, every episode. And then all of a sudden, Ultraman flies up to the sun, comes down, does the thing, wrestles the monster, and it's done. Doesn't this feel like that? Don't you get that, like, hey, holy shit, I dropped one too many mushrooms on this trip? Don't you get that feeling? Don't you sometimes wonder how they can play us for suckers for this long? And we just keep going along like, well, what do you want me to do? What do you expect me to do? I don't know what to do. We need to reject the programming. We need to reject it. All right. Let's go to the next topic. And this one we touched on in the beginning in the intro. But let's talk about the Pentagon, folks. You can't even make this stuff up. The Pentagon can't account for 63% of nearly $4 trillion in assets. Now, this isn't money, okay? This isn't just money. This is the actual assets. This is like, I don't know. Come up with a thing that the Pentagon might have. Are they missing some tanks? Are they missing some nukes? What are they missing? They can't keep track of the parts and equipment it already owns. Now, I'm going to read some of this because it's absolutely hilarious, and you just can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. Actually, you can. That's how it happens. Of course you can make this stuff up. The question is, how do they get us to believe it constantly? But with the military-industrial complex, they are like rogue renegades. They have the entire government wrapped around their finger, and they have always had it. Think about how many times we have been warned about the military-industrial complex. And yet, at the same time, the minute that the news cycle changes, we forget everything we know. We're like, yeah. Right there on it, man. Americans can't get enough of this shit. We are the most propagandized nation in the fucking world. But let's just take a look at this for a minute. Pentagon can't account for 63% of nearly $4 trillion in assets. DoD regularly buys parts and equipment it doesn't need because it can't keep track of the parts and equipment it already owns. Well, there's nothing like it. Hey, babe, where'd I put my toilet paper? I don't know, hon. Where'd you put it? I don't know. Maybe I used it to wipe my ass. I don't know. Here, have another roll of toilet paper. Obviously, you look over, there's like a stack of toilet. Anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead and look at this thing here. I think this is going to be funny to y'all. Pentagon failed its 6th audit in a row last month, and failed is putting it generously. The department actually received a disclaimer of opinion, according to the Government Accountability Office, that means auditors were unable to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence to provide a basis for an audit opinion. So the outcome is more like an incomplete than an abject failure. But semantics aside, one major reason the Pentagon keeps failing audits is because it can't keep track of its property. Last year, the Pentagon couldn't properly account for a whopping 61% of its $3.5 trillion in assets. That figure increased this year, with the department insufficiently documenting 63% of its now $3.8 trillion in assets. Military contractors possess many of these assets, but to an extent unbeknownst to the Pentagon. Let's stop for a minute. Let's take a second for this. The military, okay, has contractors. Now, I want you to understand what a contractor is. Contractors are private sector coming in to do public sector work, okay? Government does this all the time. They put out bids for jobs. Somebody bids for it, they get the job. Now, private sector gets paid extra money for doing what could have been done by government workers to begin with. But they go ahead and they farm it out to private sector industry, payola in many cases. So think about the Halliburtons of the world, the BlackRocks of the world, all these different groups that the Pentagon, Boeing, you name it, goes ahead and just pumps money into these folks' pockets. Just pumps it into it. Wait till you hear. These guys are like saying, hey, we'll give you an accounting of what we have of yours, but you got to pay us to do the accounting of the stuff that we have, right? These public-private partnerships are all part of this neoliberal capitalist kind of approach to society. It's this ability to minimize the public sector while simultaneously beefing up the private sector without any accountability at all. Zero. Okay? People are making money hand over fist in the military-industrial complex with very, very limited oversight. And it's really intended to be that way, right? Like, this is not a bug. This is a feature. This is a feature of a capitalist system. Now, the funny thing is that when you sit there and you hire a government contractor, okay, nothing wrong with a government contractor necessarily, but when you hire a government contractor, you are in essence giving them a job to do for the government, that they're not a government employee, that they're not a government entity, they're not a government agency, they're not a government institution, okay? And you can think about this like they did, but they farmed out the banking system. What did the government do? The government gave a job, it bid it out, it put it out there, and they created this thing. You see the government do this all the time. Private contractors, hitmen, these guys that are running around as private militia, but they're being paid by the federal government. And these guys get lots of gear, lots of equipment, lots of goodies from the government. It's not your tax dollar. If it was your tax dollar, we'd all be broke because there's so much money going into these groups that you can't even begin to understand. Trillions of dollars is going into these things. Trillions. That money right there that you spent on these contractors is quote unquote debt. Okay? So when the government spends that money into existence, hey, guess what? Now all of a sudden that money has got to be quote unquote paid back. But it really doesn't. That's kind of the farce. That's the joke. That's the inside dig if you don't understand. Government spending money into existence is only debt in the sense that it's a liability of the government to receive it back as a tax. Okay? The other thing, the government, with all these interest rate games it's been playing, government chooses to sell bonds. It chooses to sell these debt instruments. The government doesn't do that as a funding operation. The government does that as a matter of course because everybody loves a safe investment. And what could be more safe than a U.S. government bond? It always pays its bills. Unless, of course, they hijack it in the debt ceiling fights. Okay? So anyway, let's get back to this. Let's talk about the Pentagon some more. The GAO flagged this issue for the department since at least 1981. Yet 1981, the Reagan era, right? The latest audit states the Pentagon's target to correct insufficient accounting department-wide is fiscal year 2031. In the meantime, contractors are producing weapon systems and spare parts that they may already possess. An incredible waste. This is the part that makes me throw up in my mouth a little. Here you go. In the meantime, contractors are producing weapon systems and spare parts that they may already possess. An incredible waste of taxpayer dollars. Taxpayer dollars, right? Let's do something here real quick. Let's get this up on the screen here for a minute. Colin, I'm going to give you a link here for a second. And I'm going to put this in the private chat. Please put this up on the screen if you don't mind. So this article that I'm going to read to you for just a second, as soon as Colin brings it up, it's a very important article because it hopefully will help you guys get out of this moronic, and folks, it is moronic. You just don't realize it because you've been duped for so long. But it's a moronic belief that your taxes, when I just sat there and told you the government spends that shit into existence, that you believe that taxpayer dollars are doing it. And this is what they keep saying. And by doing that, by saying it's taxpayer money, then the Republicans naturally can say, well, I don't want my tax dollars going to pay for your Medicare and your abortions and blah, blah, blah. They don't ever say any of that shit about the military-industrial complex. But even when they try and use that line of bullshit, in the end, it really is just that bullshit. So let's go ahead and read this together for a minute, okay? I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want you to understand. Margaret Thatcher in 1983, there is no such thing as public money, only taxpayer money. Folks, that's Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher, she of the original neoliberal order, her and Ronald Reagan, kissing cousins, the best friends of the neoliberal order, the ones that created this lie, this myth that there's only taxpayer dollars. There isn't public money. You know, if let's be fair, if you're a Thatcherite, if you're a Reaganite, then please, by all means, continue talking about taxpayer dollars. But if you're not a Reaganite, if you're not a Thatcherite, if you're not a neoliberal, okay, let's correct the language. Let's learn this a little bit together, shall we? So he says, when Vice President, and this is old. This is all because these principles don't matter when they're said. They're true. When Vice President Mike Pence flew home to Indiana earlier this month, it was to pull off a publicity stunt censuring protests against racist policing. Rather than dragging him for this, however, take after take after take zoomed in on a different offense altogether. Pence's wasting of taxpayer money. Standard shitlib thinking. Standard shitlib, I don't understand economics thinking. So the writers in question may have told themselves that they're hurting Pence by exposing this hypocrisy. Wait, hold on. What happened to my screen there? Here we go. I think I got it. There we go. Anyway, exposing this hypocrisy. Although, well, sorry about that. This is hypocrisy, but using the taxpayer money frame, they were spreading, however, unwittingly, a racist, sexist, classist myth. Although most of us pay taxes of some kind, every time we say taxpayer money, we prolong the illusion that society depends on certain kinds of people so we can have nice things. One quick exercise shows why. Picture a taxpayer. What does he look like? A homeless black trans teen, an immigrant day laborer waiting on the corner, a young mom trying to cobble together enough income to feed her family while languishing on disability backlog? Unlikely. Let's be honest. We know what sort of people taxpayers are supposed to be, and they're not the ones we should be casting as the aggrieved parties. Calling public money taxpayer money implicitly affirms that taxation is theft. In other words, the LOL libertarians would have it right if that were true. But it's not true. If the money is taxpayers by right, what business does the government have using it for healthcare, jobs, or clean water? If we're looking out for taxpayers and not the public as a whole, we're favoring wealthier groups over poorer ones, white people over black people, men over women, U.S.-born people over immigrants. Oh, you don't say. And so forth. We're hiding how the economic order relies on not merely on the sacrifices of taxpayers, but the contributions of debtors, tenants, workers, and countless other actors. We're perpetuating the politics behind the 1970s California taxpayer revolt, the 1980s demonization of welfare queens, and the Make America Great Again movement faux populism that suggests the great majority rely on the wealthy rather than vice versa. Not only is the taxpayer money frame damaging, it doesn't reflect how public spending actually works. A household or a business may have to stash or borrow money before it can spend any day, but we are users of the currency. U.S. government, which is the issuer of the currency, works differently. Congress votes to spend new money on something, then the Treasury and the Federal Reserve credit the relevant bank accounts, and that's it. The government has spent new money into existence. Later, Congress may tax old money back out of existence, but it isn't collecting the money in order to spend it. It's offsetting earlier spending. It may also offset spending by bumping student loan rates, policing for profit, or other various activities. Although Congress taxes everyday people too heavily, calling public money taxpayer money makes as much sense as calling it student debtor money or suspicious driver money. Look at a dollar bill and you will see the signatures of its creators, not taxpayers, but the public official who let the taxpayers hold it in the first place. Money does not grow on rich people. We should heavily tax the billionaire class so we stop living in an oligarchy, but we don't need private capital for public fucking spending. The federal government doesn't confiscate dollars and redistributes them. It uses its legal power to create and destroy them. Margaret Thatcher's mantra was backwards. There is no such thing as taxpayer money, only public money. Modern money is a creature of the public, and we should use it for public power. We are all the public, and we each deserve a clear, equal say in how our economy and our society work. No matter how much we each pay in taxes, it's time to claim our democratic rights. So with that, jump on back over here to the Pentagon with me. And we'll say this is where it gets funny. The F-35 program is a great example. The Pentagon technically owns the global pool of spare parts for all variations of the F-35, but the program's contractors, mainly Lockheed Martin and Pratt & Whitney, manage those parts. According to the GAO, the Pentagon relies on contractors to record the cost, total quantity, and locations of F-35 spare parts in the global spares pool. The department has estimated that the value of F-35 parts in possession of contractors is over $220 billion. But the GAO reports that this is likely significantly understated. The Pentagon doesn't know what or how much government property contractors have because it doesn't have access to contractor records. Now, mind you, the government has contracted these people to do a job. The government should have full visibility of all of that, but they're saying they don't. So Lockheed Martin has even threatened to charge the Pentagon for reports on what and how many F-35 parts the government owns. But Lockheed Martin possesses. A few years ago, the corporation estimated that it would take 450,000 labor hours to produce these reports, making them too expensive for even the Pentagon, which appears to have trusted this estimate. Congress authorized procurement funding for 90 F-35s that year, 11 more than the Pentagon requested. Last year, the Department of Defense Office of the Inspector General noted that the Pentagon's inability to keep track of its property could lead it to understate its property held by contractors and potentially buy more than it needs. Ooh. In September, Inspector General Robert Storch reported that in 2021, the Army's spare parts forecasting was only 20% accurate on average. 20%, folks. 20%. I said, what is he? It was shooting guard for the Washington Wizards. 20% accurate on average. As a result, the Army overstated how many spare parts it needed by 202 million. Now, mind you, they don't give a flying fuck how accurate they are here. But let you or I screw up on our taxes, and suddenly those fuckers will come for you for $2,000. They'll garnish your wage for $10,000. They'll come after you like a fucking house on fire for $40,000. But these fuckers, they don't even know where $202 million is. Think about it. $202 million for the federal fucking government, the military industrial complex, and their contractors. In addition to spending another $148 million on spare parts it didn't anticipate needing at all. The other military services didn't do any better, overshooting their listen to this, overshooting their spare part needs by $760 million, spending $355 million on parts they didn't know they needed. All in all, the military overshot its spare parts needs by nearly $1 billion. It spent over half a billion on spare parts it didn't forecast. Anyway, they go into all this other stuff. I mean, bottom line, it's really ridiculous. It is really, really ridiculous. I'll read this. Last year, Congress allocated near at least $39.5 billion to procure aircrafts, their spare parts, and other equipment, despite not knowing what the government already owned. But insufficient tracking of inventory property doesn't just increase the risk of overbuying spare parts. It also inhibits the Pentagon from maintaining government property in possession of contractors. In May, the GAO revealed that in the past 5 years, Lockheed Martin has lost, damaged, or destroyed, wait for this, over 1 million spare parts for the F-35 worth over $85 million. Now, I want you to put this in context. Jane and Joe six-pack, the proletariat, we the people, are struggling to get student lunches for kids. We worry about layoffs and unemployment insurance. We worry about a job guarantee or increased Social Security payments. 85 million right there. 85 million. Procured $39.5 billion over and above because they didn't know how to track the parts. You didn't hear anybody bitch and moan about inflation. You didn't hear anybody called a moocher. You didn't hear anybody called living off the government teat. But yet you didn't have any increase in taxes either, because the government didn't need your taxes to do this shit. It only uses that boogeyman when it's trying to serve you or I or we, the people. So she goes on and closes out with, the Pentagon clearly has a lot of work to do to properly track its property and to produce auditable financial statements. It has no idea what equipment it already owns, so it can't maintain its property or anticipate more of what it needs. The department is spending, here we go, look, folks. The department is spending taxpayer money recklessly. But taxpayers cannot wait until 2031 for the Pentagon to correct its decades-old inventory problem. Now, I want you to think about this. I just sat there and showed you in spades. The government spends money into existence. I've also shown you the taxpayer dollars ain't a thing. You pay taxes, but the point of those taxes is literally because they want to increase or decrease buying power. They want to ensure that you have to use the dollar by charging you a tax payable only in US dollars. That's how they maintain the dollar, not the petrodollar, although that's good on the global scale. Petrodollar is a sufficient anchor to make the dollar in play, but it doesn't have anything to do with the government's ability to spend, as you can clearly see. The government can spend that money into existence and does every single day. And they never flinch when it comes to bombs, when it comes to tanks and planes. But you let some poor fuck who's struggling to get their teeth fixed or struggling with a child that needs something, and there'll be some shithead coming behind them saying, you're a moocher, you're stealing my hard-earned tax dollars, you raided Social Security. Fucking ignorance is overwhelming. And yet, they know They got you by the short hairs because they keep you in this spin cycle round the clock, thinking these things, saying them, repeating them. News anchors say them. Your fucking dipshit alt media people keep talking about taxpayer dollars. All your favorite politicians, you taxpayer dollars. Fucking morons, economically illiterate to the extreme, and helping perpetuate the lie, the myth that enables the very shit we're about to talk about here in just a moment. And that right here is a Politico article on these electronic vehicle EV charging stations. And I want to take you through this. This is another one that is absolutely hilarious. Folks, listen to this. I mean, and I want you to think about it really hard. In the United States, we are so viciously independent. We are so determined to be individuals. We are libertarian at heart. Even if we hate libertarians, we are libertarian because it's all about me, myself, and I. The idea of mass transit, the idea of sustainable communities, the idea of building things with a plan instead of just my freedoms, okay? Just too much for us. So what do? Instead of actually doing something with the environment, instead of actually doing something to mitigate the climate crisis, now we got a good idea, man. We're going to go ahead and sell hybrids, and we're going to sell electronic vehicles. And we're going to act like we're very serious people as we enable green fake capitalism, this greenwashing capitalism with these EVs, these electric vehicles that are doing the same exact predatory bullshit that the oil and gas industry does in the global south as they pilfer lithium and they pilfer other natural resources for these batteries, creating yet again another environmental hazard, creating yet again the pathway away from the solutions that will help save lives as we got unmitigated climate crisis crashing down on us. Let's go into this. Congress provided $7.5 billion for electric vehicle chargers. Built so far, zero. The sluggish rollout could undermine President Joe Biden's re-election messaging promoting electric vehicles. Now, I want you to think about this. I really want you to think about this. I'm assuming that most of you are lefties. Maybe not all of you, but I'm assuming most of you are. And I am. And so when I hear somebody fattening up capital, and I hear the government spending and subsidizing capital, and I hear them subsidizing greenwashing, fake environmental programs, fake environmental sensibilities that give good liberals, really good liberals, the pat on the back. Oh, that a boy, go ahead and recycle. You're a good liberal. Go ahead and drive an electric vehicle. You're a good liberal. Never mind the fact that the electric vehicles are going in the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 range. Yes, you can get some cheap ones in the mid-30s, maybe a used one in the mid-20s, but everybody's trying to get a Tesla. Everybody's slurping on Elon Musk's government-subsidized junk and wondering why nothing's really fundamentally changing. You've got a COP28 going on right now, which is an embarrassment. I want you to understand something. The global south, Africa, has been struggling mightily by U.S. predation for its unquenchable petrol desires, for its unquenchable desires to have the pollution manufactured elsewhere, offshored, so that they can bring the products and services back while simultaneously leaving Africa and the rest of the global south in fucking poverty. Absolutely fucking them up royally, okay? But here we go. As we sit there and we hear Biden's his achievement of achieving the greatest Build Back Better, the electric vehicle revolution. It's all crap. It's all garbage. It's fake. It's not real. It's once again facilitating the largesse that we already do. And it allows good liberals to feel like they're doing something really well. Mind you, folks, if they took the climate crisis seriously, let's just pretend electric vehicles are the solution. They're not, but let's pretend they are. Wouldn't you think that subsidizing them so that poor people could afford an electric vehicle as well might be the path forward? Alas, it's still one of these luxury items that bougie people tend to buy. Okay? If you got it, right? That's capitalism for you, baby. See, I'm not a capitalist. I'm not big on the private sector, but I hate our government, the way it's structured, the way these people act. I don't believe it. I think it's fake. I don't believe that it represents us. You know, Marianne Williamson. I'm not a big Marianne Williamson fan. I think she's a lot of fluff, but I think she says a few things that are decent. But she's already cut off because the Democratic Party is doing what it always does. And yet there are people out there who refuse to acknowledge that the Democratic Party has no interest in your vote other than making it look like the Bukkake theater that they put together is somehow or another legitimate. Your vote legitimizes their theft of your version of democracy. Okay? They don't allow you to have a say in this. You're just going to be whipped over the head, and you're going to be told you will vote for Joe Biden, and you will love it. You will absolutely love it. You'll snuggle it. You'll wrap it. You'll swaddle it. You say, I love it. I'll kiss it. I'll free. I want to pay you. You will bite down and swallow every bit of the lies they pump down your throat because they're very good at it, and they pay endless amounts of money to ensure you stay ridiculously addicted. They'll have the Justice Democrats come out. They'll have this Democrat. We'll have the other group come out. And what? Show me what you got for it. You got Medicare for all? No? No? Do you have a job guarantee? No. Do you have expanded Social Security? No. Do you have student debt? No. No, you don't. Why not? Why the fuck don't you when all you had to do was vote for Joe Biden, remember? Don't be a dummy Hasbro. Don't be a knucklehead. Wake up. Just wake up and realize it's bullshit. It's bullshit in the chef's salad. Let's get back to this. Congress, at the urging of the Biden administration, agreed in 2021 to spend $7.5 billion to build tens of thousands of electric vehicle chargers across the country, aiming to appease anxious drivers while tackling climate change. 2 years later, the program has yet to install a single charger. States and the charger industry blame the delays mostly on the labyrinth of new contracting and performance requirements they have to navigate to receive federal funds. Oh, no. We can't regulate the industry. We need free markets without oversight. Why should we be any different than the Pentagon? While federal officials have authorized more than $2 billion of the funds to be sent to states, fewer than half of the states have even started taking bids from contractors to build the chargers, let alone begin construction. Consumer demand for electric vehicles is rising in the United States, necessitating 6 times as many chargers on its roads by the end of the decade, according to federal estimates. But not a single charger funded by the bipartisan infrastructure law has come online, and odds are they will not be able to start powering American vehicles until at least 2024. Getting chargers up and running across the country is essential to reaching President Joe Biden's goal of having half the vehicles sold in the United States be electric by the end of the decade. A key cog in his climate agenda, his greenwashing, capitalist fucking climate agenda. Anyway, back to Africa momentarily. The U.S. is offering them like $100 million for climate crisis for the global South. $100 million. You realize that the contractors for the military-industrial complex accidentally lose that in the couch. They lose that in the car, you know, the thing between the seat and the console. They just drop these millions in there. But for addressing the global South, who we have decimated, we're offering up $110 million. Anyway. Getting chargers up and running across the country is essential to reaching Joe Biden's goal of having half the vehicles sold in the United States be electric by the end of the decade, a key cog of his climate agenda. Americans consistently say the lack of charging infrastructure is one of the top reasons they won't buy an electric car. Folks, Jesus, F and H Christ. The reason why people aren't buying electric cars, they can't fucking afford them. They can't afford them. Okay? They're the most expensive fucking vehicles, and they're not all that cool even. But you must decide. Are you a capitalist that just wants to feel good and be a good liberal and buy yourself an electric vehicle and say, I'm doing my part? Or do you want to actually understand climate crisis and say, fuck that? We need to build sustainable cities. We need fast mass transit, high-speed rail. We need to have all kinds of mass transit. We need to ensure that we're not living this weird fucking, I've got my little one-seater car putting out plenty of whatever into the atmosphere and fucking you up forever because I need my independence, right? You got to make a choice because the green capitalism ain't it. And let me tell you, green capitalism is destroying. We have a gentleman coming to our show tomorrow over at Real Progressives. We have a webinar with a gentleman named Hamza Hamashen. And Hamza is talking about ending green colonialism. And I'll give you a point of case here. Tunisia is being run by Germans who are making them produce green hydrogen to send it back up to Germany. Then Germany then in turn gives them shitty fucking petroleum at cost, expensive, right? And tells Tunisians that they have to balance the weight of the climate crisis, just like we're all in this together. But Tunisia has less than 0.01% of the actual output, the actual carbon. So what the hell is Tunisia doing trying to balance Germany, who is a huge polluter, similar to the United States? Think about what I'm saying. Please, think about what I'm saying. Don't just accept what they say. Be better than that. Do the homework. Because I'm telling you right now, Africa is getting raped by the global north and the elite white capitalist class. It's extremely important to understand this. So anyway, Republican opponents are now trying to shut down the administration's efforts to build a charging network by choking off its funding. Oh my. And the sluggish rollout could undermine Biden's EV-themed re-election messaging and increase the possibility of a Republican in the White House could roll back the charging network efforts in 2025. It's been frustrating, to say the least. Arkady Sasanoff, founder and CEO of charging manufacturer FreeWire Technologies, said of the slow pace of the rollout. Biden signed the bipartisan infrastructure bill package into law in 2021 with $7.5 billion specifically directed toward EV chargers, with an eye toward achieving his goal of building 500,000 chargers in the United States by 2030. The United States has around 180,000 chargers today, according to the Energy Department. That includes 41,000 of the type of fast chargers that can alleviate the dreaded range anxiety of long-distance road trip in an electric vehicle. Think about that. It's just unfathomable. Can you imagine if you had a long-distance trip? Why not jump on some fucking mass Oh, shit, that's right. We don't have mass transit in this country. We don't have high-speed rail in this country. We're going to give you an electric vehicle so you can go it alone. Be like Ronnie Reagan, driving your electric vehicle. Fuck the environment. You're a good liberal. You got yourself an EV. Pat yourself on the back. Got to feel good. Green capitalism all the way, baby. So in June, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory projected the U.S. will need 1.2 million public chargers by 2030 to meet charging demand, including 182,000 fast chargers. Administration officials insist the pace at which they are rolling out the infrastructure law's charging funds is to be expected, given the difficulty of creating a brand new program in every state and marshaling the private sector to meet complex reliability and performance requirements for each federally funded station. They hate planning. They hate actual government. but they like government money like you wouldn't believe. And as long as the government will give them money, they'll do whatever they want. The goal is a reliable and standardized network in every corner of the nation, says Gabe Klein, executive director of the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, which leads the federal government's effort on EV charging. You have to go slow to go fast, Klein said in an interview. These are things that will take a little bit of time, but boy, when you're done, it's going to be completely change the game. The bulk of the infrastructure law funds, $5 billion, are dedicated to building fast chargers along interstate highways under the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. The program requires the chargers meet a strict set of standards, such as being built at least every 50 miles over major routes, being operational at least 97% of the time, and featuring credit card readers for easy payment. I mean, let's think about this for a minute. Go ahead and take that down. In the end, if you really are serious about climate crisis, you already realize rich bastard billionaires are driving around, flying around in their jets, they're taking off in their monster yachts, military-industrial complex polluting up like hell, you wouldn't even believe. Big Ag is out there putting out lots of cow farts. All kinds of good stuff is happening. But they're going to go ahead and give you all kinds of extra shit to make sure that you can drive an electric vehicle all over the country instead of providing mass transit. Think about what I'm saying. Think about what I'm saying. Anyway. Well, the last story on here, because I could beat that one up to the end, is that top Dems press the Supreme Court to block a billionaire tax. The Lever put this out. Julia Rock wrote this. Obama, former acting Solicitor General and a senator turned lobbyist, are helping a dark money group pressure the high court. Can you imagine? Let's just ask ourselves for real. What exactly do you think Democrats have a reason for blocking a billionaire tax? The former Supreme Court lawyer for the Obama administration. Gosh, he was such a great president, wasn't he? For the Obama administration, Democratic senator turned lobbyists are pressuring justices to block Congress from ever instituting a wealth tax on the super rich, according to court filings reviewed by the Lever. And I don't have any more than that because I don't have a free subscription. So, Colin, can you bring that up? You got it up. There we go. Let's go ahead and read it together then. Go ahead and scroll down to now the group. I want to see former. Nope, go back up. I'm sorry. Okay. Former Obama acting Solicitor General Neil Katyal, recently submitted an amicus brief in the Supreme Court case Moore versus the United States on behalf of the group Saving America's Family Enterprises Safe. That anonymously funded group, whose board includes corporate lobbyists, has spearheaded campaigns against Democrats' efforts to tax the inheritances and wealth of millionaires and billionaires. Now the group is aiming to use the seemingly obscure corporate taxation case to elicit a broad ruling that outlaws all wealth taxes. Think about that. This guy, Katyal, is an MSNBC mainstay who came to prominence as a liberal defender of Republican President Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominees, all of whom will now rule on the case. And folks, this feels very much like Countrywide, doesn't it? When Countrywide had all the rotating door from industry back to government and back again. I mean, this is the kind of shit, man. This is your Democratic Party. This is Republicans. This is the lie that they sell as government. Because you didn't vote for this shit. Did you vote for any of this? I didn't vote for any of this. Did you vote for it? Did you vote for it? No. So what the fuck are we lying and saying we got a democracy? This is not a democracy. Stop pretending. Wake up, Peter Pan, Count Chocula. It's not a democracy. Anyway, In recent years, Qatar has helped Nestle defend itself in a child slavery case before the Supreme Court and represented Johnson & Johnson in its bid to use bankruptcy to block lawsuits from cancer victims. Listed on the Qatar authored amicus brief alongside SAFE is the group's senior advisor, former Louisiana Senator John Breaux, Democrat, who also lobbies for ExxonMobil, Norfolk Southern, and Boeing. Folks, Norfolk Southern, Boeing, for fuck's sake. Did you vote for that? Ask yourself, did you vote for these sacks of dung? You didn't. And if you did you vote for this? I know that they're not in office, but this is who they are. This is what they do. And this is why they got the jobs they got when they left Congress. Listed on his authored amicus brief alongside SAFE is the group's senior advisor, former Senator John Breaux, who also lobbies for ExxonMobil, Norfolk Southern, and Boeing corporations, whose top executives could have a financial interest in the outcome of the case. Breaux also lobbies for billionaire financial magnate and Democratic megadonor James Simmons. Folks, wake up. Wake up. SAFE is organized as a so-called did I skip a no, I didn't skip. SAFE is organized as a so-called social welfare nonprofit. Oh, that's too rich. SAFE is organized as a so-called social welfare nonprofit, which allows it to hide the identity of its donors and avoid taxes while spending money to influence policy decisions. In response to recent ethics scandals at the Supreme Court, 34 Democrat senators have signed on to legislation that would require organizations filing amicus briefs to disclose their donors. But because that bill is stalled, SAFE can pressure the Supreme Court to block a wealth tax while refusing to disclose its benefactors. SAFE did not respond to the lever for a request for a list of donors. It doesn't matter. It's all the same shit, right? Qatar versus billionaire tax. Democrat lawmakers and the Biden administration have touted a wealth tax as a way to tackle record levels of inequality and fund programs. See, this is the thing. And fund programs. It's a lie. Big fucking lie right there. That slash poverty and expand access to healthcare. So naturally, of course, my God, these programs are bankrupt. If we don't take money, we need billionaires to be rich so that we can take their money. We got to maintain billionaires, because if we don't, however will we fund our government programs? Think about that. In order to fund programs, you need those billionaires to stay billionaires. Otherwise, the government has no money, right? The government has no money, right? Come on, for real. Bring it back up, Colin. Sorry about that, buddy. I just had a moment. While there is virtually no chance of a wealth tax passing in the Republican-led House of Representatives, major corporate lobbying groups and right-wing think tanks are asking the Supreme Court to preemptively rule that such a tax would be unconstitutional in a case involving an unrelated one-time levy on foreign corporate earnings imposed in 2017. The case in question, Moore versus the United States, deals with a challenge to the mandatory repatriation tax, a $340 billion provision in the 2017 GOP tax law. The mandatory repatriation tax mostly applied to major corporations, but also affected the small number of Americans who have a larger than 10% stake in offshore corporations. Two such Americans, Charles and Kathleen Moore of Washington State, sued, arguing the mandatory repatriation tax was unconstitutional. If the Supreme Court strikes down that tax, it could create a multi-billion-dollar windfall for major corporations and eliminate one of the only revenue-raising provisions in the 2017 law that otherwise cut taxes for the wealthy and businesses. Folks, let me just tell you this. Pull me up. Corporations. You're going to think I'm crazy when I say what I'm about to say, but I'm okay with that. Ask me anything. The bottom line is corporations should have zero income tax. Number one, corporations pass on all tax hikes to we the people. It becomes increased cost. They don't really pay it. We pay it for them. Okay. And the other thing, you're not really stopping them from doing anything, because as long as we're paying the tax, they don't give a shit. The only way to really, really impact a fucking corporation is to tax the C-suite, to tax those fuckers with their stock buybacks, to tax those fuckers that have the golden parachutes, to tax them at their wealth. You put that on those people and you say, hey, if you don't invest your profits back into your workers and give them a seat at the table for the board and give them a cost of living increase and give them benefits, etc. If you don't do that, then we're going to put a Pagovian tax on you. It has nothing to do with raising funds or paying for anything. But we're going to put a Pagovian, in other words, a sin tax on you that will make you wish you had just gone ahead and taken care of the people. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, guess what? It's not going to happen. Why? Because we live in a capitalist fucking shithole that is literally the conflation of state and corporation, which by any other word would be called fascism. Okay? This is fascism. It's corporatocracy. This is exactly what you're dealing with here. Bring the article back up, Colin. So, but more petitioners have another goal as well, preempting Congress from ever instituting a federal wealth tax. They want the court to rule that income must be realized in order for it to be taxable under the Constitution. In other words, that an asset needs to be sold in order for its value to be taxed. In practical terms, if the High Court decides that the realization is part of the definition of income, a radical divergent from precedent, but also a real possibility from the right-wing bench, wealth tax proposals like those opposed by SAFE could be deemed unconstitutional. Why do we have a SCOTUS anyway? Why do we have a Supreme Court? It's not in the Constitution. Constitution was written by a bunch of rich fucks. Has nothing to do with we the people. We're the people that were out of doors. We're not the wealthy landowners. It's them. Constitution wasn't written for us. It was written for them. And it's got so many safeguards in it to ensure that we the people never have a voice in this thing. Okay? Once again, this is rich people problems. This isn't your problem. It isn't funding shit. But by allowing them to maintain that wealth, it allows them to have an outsized impact on the environment. It allows them to have an outsized impact on our public discourse. It allows them to control institutions. It allows them to control real resources. So we need a wealth tax. We need to tax it before it ever makes it to them. We need to not let them accumulate that shit. And when it comes to next generation, folks, we're not supposed to be creating these new oligarchs, babies coming out of the womb with their nepotism that gives them millions to start out the chute. That is not a democracy. That is an oligarchy. That is, once again, the worst in class warfare known to mankind. And we just let it happen. Bring it back up. So although these proposals take aim at economic elites, history teaches that a tax on the unrealized gains of the middle-class Americans is not far behind. Cattell wrote in the amicus brief for SAFE. See how they're trying to bring us in. Hey, us rich people, we're just really like you guys in the middle. You don't protect us. It's going to come for you eventually. It's going to come for you eventually. Okay? Cattell wrote in the amicus brief for SAFE, adding that the existing repatriation levy is an unworkable and counterproductive tax scheme that will, in addition to saddling individual taxpayers with complicated new taxes, unfairly burden family businesses. Cattell did not respond to a request for comment. Anyway, we can be done with this, folks. I want you to take a moment and think about it. Everything we talked about here, you consume this shit, and it's like saccharin. It's like poison. It's toxic. It fucks your mind up. It makes you believe things that just ain't so. And then it makes you repeat them to your friends, who then in turn repeat it to others and carry the water, these lies. They rely on that to keep us where we are, stuck, wanting, needing. And then they very serious people hand wringing. I just don't know how we can afford to give people health care. I don't know how we can afford and bankrupt the taxpayers by giving away student debt and letting people off the hook. But what about my hard-earned tax dollar? You start to realize the game. You stop playing it. But you got to take a minute to step back and learn. All right, folks, that's the end of my trip here. I appreciate you guys indulging my ass. I really, really hope that you guys become a member of Status Coup. I love this place. It's my second home. By all means, join the Status Coup, become a donor, sign up on the YouTube channel. If you're out there and you're watching this video, smash that like button. Go ahead and share this thing. Leave a comment for the algorithm, okay? But in the end, subscribe, because that's how this content makes it out to you. And Jordan is the king of investigative reporting. This channel's done a lot of great work over the years, and I'm proud to be a part of it. As for myself, I'm the founder of two nonprofits, Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. I do a podcast called Macro and Cheese that comes out Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern time. It's available. You can download it anytime on any podcast platform you want, or you can go to our website and get it right off there as well, or our Substack, realprogressives.substack, or however the hell that goes. Anyway, I also do a show. It's been on hiatus for a minute, but The Rogue Scholar is Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 12 noon. I plan to get back to it probably between middle of December, maybe the first of the year. I've needed a break. I'm taking a break. I got a break. In any event, tomorrow, I will tell you, bring me back on. Tomorrow, over at our organization, Real Progressives, we have a webinar. It's going to be at noon Eastern Standard Time. You can go to our website, realprogressives.org. Right there on the front page, it has a calendar. Click on the calendar. Click on Hamza Hemeshen, RP Live, and come check it out. He's talking about ending and dismantling green colonialism. This guy is an Algerian activist, brilliant man. Wrote a great book about dismantling green capitalism, and it talks about the Arab region and the Middle East and North Africa and what the global North has been doing to predate upon these people. It is an eye-opener, and I promise you it's worth your time. Show up. With that, thank you guys very much. I appreciate you all so much. Oh, I'm sorry, Saturday, not tomorrow. I always forget this shit. Saturday. Thank you so much, Jules. Go ahead and put that comment up there. Yeah, we got it's actually Saturday, so my bad. Thank you so much for correcting me. Anyway, not bad for off the cuff. I tried. Jordan, I hope your little baby toe gets feeling better, because I know it hurts to have a boo-boo, especially when you're trying to put weight on a toe. So with that, I'm Steve Grumbine with Status Coup and from Real Progressives. Have a great night, everybody. I'm out of here.